It is clear as day, like it or not, license issues be damned, copyleft, source available, proprietary. I have never heard these terms in my entire life. AI is here to stay in the FOSS world, sometimes for AI code, sometimes for security reports, sometimes for bug triaging, and many, many other such cases. Some projects are taking a really hard stance either for or against it, others not so much. They have some general contributor guidelines, and then are sort of just kind of making them mostly fit on the occasion when they get some AI code to deal with. They're not really hard set one way or the other. However, I do think it is worth having the conversation about what your personal relationship and what your project's relationship with this technology is going to be. Because if you're just, let's say you're a random terminal out there. Let's say you're making a library. Let's say you're making a calorie tracker, things like that. You can avoid AI code for the most part. But if you're a Linux distro, this is a very different equation because of the Linux kernel. Because of these core level components which, unless you're planning to fork, you're gonna have to accept some level of AI code, and this also applies to Rust code as well, for all the people out there who think they can avoid it. Right now, it's still early days, and you can avoid things, but as this starts entering more and more key systems, doing so becomes much, much harder, and you're either gonna have to deal with it, or just stop using Linux. And Debian is currently tackling exactly this problem with their general resolution on LLM usage. There is currently 4 separate proposals, and all of which have basically the same level of support behind them, which honestly kinda surprised me, but also none of them are a strict hardline stance, because Debian knows that even if they choose, we're not going to package any random applications that use LLMs. We're not going to use LLMs ourselves. It's still Linux. And they're not going to fork the kernel, so you have to at least accept that one project. So let us go through them. Firstly is Proposal A by Matthias Geiger. Now, the interesting thing here is none of these are these, strict, we're doing one thing and not the other thing. A lot of the people that proposed them also seconded a different proposal as well. So there's a lot of overlap here. A lot of people have very similar ideas and just slightly disagree on some of the little nuances. This one is probably the strictest proposal. This proposal aims to expressly forbid any contributions to Debian written with the use or assistance of large language models, LLMs, or other generative AI tools. The scope of this general resolution is non-exhaustive. Debian source packages, so packages on Debian, official Debian project software such as Lintian, so applications they make in-house, their build tooling, things like that, Debian web resources, so the Debian website itself, documentation and translations added by Debian contributors, and official communication from Debian. So if they release a blog post, that blog post would not be using AI, which I think is a reasonable thing. If you're going to do things like AI to maybe, as an enhanced spell check, I think that's fine, but writing the entire blog post, sure, totally fair. It does not include upstream projects using LLMs for development. That's a very key thing. Upstream projects such as the Linux kernel, AI-related software, so if it's a tool for working with AI, they're not really opposed to AI being used in the AI software, which, fair. Upstream patches / security fixes. This is also directly relevant to the Linux kernel, but whilst it is about the Linux kernel, it also applies to various other projects as well. For example, if KDE wanted to start using AI for security fixes, things like that, they wouldn't then say, we will not package KDE. Or let's say something like GNU. Let's say GNU was, okay, AI is totally fine, go ahead and use it. That would still be allowed to be packaged because, obvious reasons, if they didn't, then you're going to have some bigger problems. And here is the rationale. Debian has a well-earned reputation for stability. I would say being stale, but sure. It's Debian people talking about it. This stability is crucial to Debian's position in the free software ecosystem. It is our belief that widespread LLM usage comes from the move fast and break things attitude, while common in many parts of this industry is contrary to what makes Debian Debian, and is inappropriate for Debian contributors. In practical terms, LLM usage raises the following concerns. 1. Copyright. Whilst this is not an issue which has been fully ironed out yet, if sometime down the line it is decided that AI-generated artifacts are just, let's say, not at all applicable to the license, they are just effectively treated as proprietary, now you've got a giant bomb you've got to somehow deal with that you've just injected into every part of the FOSS board. It is this poison that is going to destroy everything. Now, the hope that everyone is banking on is basically that it goes public domain, which then creates its own separate problem, where now the licenses don't actually apply because, oh, well, if that part is public domain, it doesn't matter if you put the GPL on it, I can just take that part of the code, use it public domainly, and be good to go. And one of the important things in Debian is having clear and concise licensing. Unclear copyright or license status are not allowed in Debian. LLM output should not have a special exception to this. I am very happy this is being taken seriously. Quality. LLM output has many well-known problems with accuracy. An LLM can never know if its output is correct since it merely produces syntactically likely combinations of the training data. And even with that, it's actually surprisingly good. In some environments, this is good enough. In Debian, it is not. For instance, in packaging, each Debian source package is unique. Since packaging syntax and best practices have changed over time, an LLM-produced package will have a mixture of content spanning the age of the archive, with watch files that do not work, overrides out of context, imaginary copyright, and will be generally unfit for upload. A seasoned Debian contributor with packaging expertise may find some limited usefulness here, but a new contributor cannot and would not know how to fix it. So this isn't about, oh, they are just always going to be bad. It's people who are new to Debian are going to produce these packages and have no idea why it's wrong. Community. Debian is a project that is more than just code. It is a community built on shared interests in free software and solving technical problems. Debian intentionally grows this community through many means, and new contributors are always encouraged to join. Allowing LLM contributions breaks this. New contributors submitting LLM output for review places an unnecessary strain on the reviewer, which can lead to burnout. Furthermore, LLM-dependent new contributors do not actually learn and understand the details of Debian packaging or processes, so they cannot come to replace a former burned-out Debian developer. Basically, this is about the longevity of Debian. Debian has been around for 30 years now, and it's only going to be around for another 30 years if people actually understand how Debian works. Now, maybe it gets to a point where all of that can just be magically done by the AI. Right now, we're not at that point, so banking on that for the future of the project is, not exactly a good idea. And ethics. LLM companies directly hurt the free software community as a whole by scraping the whole web for training data without any regard for license, copyright, or even established conventions such as robots.txt. This is basically a format for telling web scrapers what they are and are not allowed to scrape, how they should be doing it, how much they're allowed to interact, all of this good stuff. A lot of the modern AI-focused scrapers entirely ignore this. Now, there have always been web scrapers that ignore robots.txt. Don't get me wrong. It's just there is a lot more of them now, and they are very, very aggressive, and there's a reason why a lot of sites you go to now have a little prompt that's like, hey, doing some calculation in the background, the whole Anubis thing, or Cloudflare has a thing, or there are various other approaches because this gets very expensive. This has had a major negative impact on Debian's public web resources, effectively a large-scale and perpetual denial of service attack on sites that many users rely on. As a consequence, parts of the infrastructure were not reachable at all, and JS-based checks had to be enabled, which then means that if you don't have JavaScript enabled, a lot of sites that otherwise should be working are not accessible. In the interest of not eroding Debian's reputation or further damaging the community, LLM-assisted contributions should be prohibited from inclusion in Debian. Though our position is that LLM contributions are contrary to documents already ratified by Debian, in order to remove all doubt, we propose the following addition to the social contracts. 6. Works created through the use of large language models. We will not allow direct contributions to Debian written with the use or assistance of large language models, LLMs, or other generative AI tools. Direct contributions are defined as packaging, native Debian software like Lintian, documentation and translations written by Debian contributors, and official Debian web resources, etc. Other categories such as upstream projects written with LLM assistance may be included at a later date. This ensures that Debian remains a stable, trusted, and reliable operating system and protects the interests of Debian volunteers who make it possible. Obviously not a perfect solution, right? Someone might say, well, how do you know the contributions are LLM contributions to make sure that that is banned from the project? We're at a point now where a lot of the time, this is really good and you are not able to actually tell. And reasonable concern, right? At the same time, though, how do you know that someone traditionally wasn't taking code from, let's say, a GPL project and trying to put it into an MIT project or a BSD project or something else like that? You don't, right? Unless you know where that code came from, you don't know that someone is doing something dishonest. But you have to deal with those on a case-by-case basis. If you find out that someone is dishonest, that someone isn't trustworthy, you have to just deal with it when you find out. You ban the person, you remove the contributions, and you go about your day. That proposal was probably the strictest of the proposals. Also, it was the longest of the proposals. As for the second one, Proposal B from Lucas Nussbaum. This is allow AI-assisted contributions. The Debian project recognizes that AI-assisted contributions raise many concerns, e.g. about the technical quality and maintainability of such contributions and their legal status. AI itself also raises additional concerns about its impact on society at large, on the IT industry, and on free software, about its environmental impact, and the aggressive or non-compliant practices of AI scrapers. Nevertheless, many Debian contributors find AI tools helpful when contributing to Debian and ultimately for improving Debian. Given both the benefits and risks of AI assistance and the controversial discussions within the community, the Debian project finds it necessary to clarify its position on AI-assisted contributions and establish clear guidelines. The Debian project allows AI-assisted contributions partially or fully generated by an LLM, provided the following conditions are met. 1. Tooling legal compatibility. Contributors should ensure the terms and conditions of the generative AI tool do not impose contractual restrictions that conflict with the distribution, modification, or use of the output in the context of Debian. Some of these AI tools say, oh, you can't use the output for commercial use cases, or this use case, or that use case. None of that should be there if you want to have it in Debian. 2. Licensing and attribution. If any pre-existing copyright materials, including pre-existing code licensed as free software, authored or owned by third parties, are included in the AI tool's output prior to contributing such output to the project, the contributor should verify they have the right to submit it under the relevant open source license. So, if the AI is not going to tell you, you have to be the one responsible for ensuring the, I guess, validity, the license status of that AI code, which frankly is already the state of things with any other code snippet out there. If you take some code snippet online, you have to ensure that you have the correct license to use that code, otherwise they don't want it in Debian. 3. Accountability. Contributors assume full responsibility for their contributions, including vouching for the technical merit, security, license compliance, and utility of their submissions. The contributor remains solely accountable for the entirety of these contributions. Contributors should fully understand the proposed changes and be prepared to justify them. You can't just have the LLM just output things and then expect them to merge it. You need to understand what you have generated. 4. Disclosure. When a significant portion of contribution is generated or substantially assisted by a tool, contributors should disclose the use of the tool, making it clearly visible to the audience, and the way they're doing so is the same way it's being done in the kernel. 5. Prior discussion of bulk or automated changes. Similarly to the mass bug filing process, which is something they already have documented for people going and doing so, contributors should discuss their intention before submitting bulk or autonomously generated contributions. Any such automated process should be overseen by a human who remains accountable for its behavior and output. Once again, you can't just go and make a bunch of changes and then expect them to deal with it, but if you are going to make a bunch of changes, you need to understand them, and you need to make the project aware that you are the one who they need to talk to. 6. Confidentiality and privacy. Contributors must not use generative AI tools that transmit data to untrusted providers with non-public or sensitive project information, such as embargoed security reports or private communication, as this may lead to the unintended disclosure of confidential data. This is a totally reasonable policy. Now for Proposal C by Ian Jackson. Reject LLMs generative AI as far as practical. LLMs have many serious problems, including undermining the mechanisms of free software community building, environmental damage, exploitation of authors, disruption to open web hosting by aggressive scraping, generation and promulgation of bullshit, polluting the information commons, hazards to users' mental health, economic bubbles, distortion of the computer hardware market, fraud, ownership by horrible people and companies, and so on. Ethical and safe use of this technology is almost impossible. Ideally, LLM output should not form any part of software that we rely on, nor should LLM output ever take the place of human-written prose. Unfortunately, some of the wider software world, including many of our upstreams, take a different view. Therefore, a complete ban on LLMs is currently impractical in Debian. So, these are the requests. 1. We request that all contributors to Debian avoid the use of LLMs in their Debian work. 2. We request that all decision makers within Debian discourage LLM use as much as possible. Practicality is a judgment call, and we recognize that it will involve uncomfortable compromises. And 3, we request that everyone, even outside of Debian, should refrain from this technology. In particular, the free software and open source communities should reject LLMs. We recognize that not everyone will heed this call. This is less of a strict policy and more of a Debian should take the stance of being a project that advocates against this. As for specific changes in Debian as a supplement to the code of conduct, within Debian, messages to humans, including, for example, bug reports, mailing list messages, discussions on Salsa, and blog posts on Planet Debian. Salsa is a bit of tech, not like actually talking about Salsa, must be drafted solely by humans without LLM assistance. Any use of LLMs for Debian work must be disclosed. I think any reasonable AI policy should have that in it. Individual project maintainers may ban LLM contributions completely. Such bans, including by upstream projects, must be respected. So Debian itself, if an upstream project bans AI, Debian then shouldn't use AI as part of the way they handle it. Violations of these requirements should be treated as violations of the code of conduct and should result in swift but proportionate disciplinary action. Any contributor who feels they cannot write in English without assistance may write in their native language and expect readers to use translation tools of their choice. In that case, a human-written English summary would be very welcome, but is not required. In any case, we promise not to shame anyone for any linguistic mistakes. I think this is one of those areas where even a lot of people who are very anti-AI are willing to compromise as sort of a accessibility tool, as a way to communicate with people who you otherwise would not be able to communicate with. And finally, Proposal D from Pierre Elliott Becque, which I probably butchered, my apologies. Accept AI contributions for Debian-specific work. Debian as a project does not endorse or recommend the use of generative AI assistance for software development, as it raises multiple concerns about ethics, legality, copyright, etc. Nevertheless, Debian acknowledges that these practices are already in use and here to stay. Rather than banning their use, which seems counterproductive and unenforceable, the project chooses to place responsibility on contributors and therefore defines the following guidelines. These apply exclusively to code and work done specifically for the Debian project, Debian websites, applications, resources, packages. They do not apply to any upstream work. In what follows, work refers to the contributions done specifically for the Debian project. all code and work assisted by a generative AI agent or tool must comply with the DFSG. That is the Debian Free Software Guidelines, how Debian defines what free software is and how it should be interacted with. The submitter is solely responsible for the submitted work, and they sufficiently evaluate it and properly understand the work they intend to submit and are able to explain and defend it. They put any potential signed off by tag and GPG signatures on the contributions they send to the Debian infrastructure, package, commit, mail themselves. Any content uploaded that would end up in production on Debian infrastructure, main Git branch, package upload, has been submitted by them explicitly, so no automated uploads. Work assisted by a generative AI agent or tool should be marked as such in the adapted place, commit message, changelog, etc. Some lightweight generative tools such as tab completion and Copilot may be used without the contributor realizing they rely on generative AI tools. We therefore trust submitters to assess when this rule applies. When in doubt, add such marking. No cloud-based AI shall be used when data transmitted could either be sensitive to the project, personal data, information under embargo, so on and so forth, or not public, Debian private discussions. So you might notice that a lot of these proposals have a lot of overlap with each other. In fact, they're all, with the, exception of like this one here, they're all roughly similar proposals. They're all basically saying, within Debian, either don't use it or extremely limit it. However, when it's an upstream project, we don't like it, but there's not a ton that can be done about it. Maybe we can advocate against its use. Maybe we can say, hey, you probably shouldn't do so. But if it's gonna exist, it's gonna exist. In Debian, though, we don't have to use it ourselves. So I don't know which proposal is going to be selected. What I do know, though, is they're all roughly the same thing, right? As I said earlier, they're all roughly the same thing with just a little bit of nuance difference between them. So, let me know. Do you have a preferred proposal? Do you have a whole nother proposal you'd like to have? Would you like to see no AI, nothing but AI, everything replaced with AI? I would like to know. So if you liked the video, go like the video, go subscribe as well. If you're on mobile, go hype the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe, Silly Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and Deb AI. You know, we're going to go with the whiteboard. Yep, I can't think of a better one.